Hey guys, have you ever noticed something a little confusing when you read your herbal books, right? So let's say you're looking at herbs that have traditionally been appreciated for supporting the respiratory system, right? Maybe you're feeling a little off. And one book would recommend mullein, another is going to recommend marshmallow root, and then somebody says something about elderflower, and then lavender just comes onto the scene, and you're like, I don't feel good. Can somebody just tell me what to do, right? I just want to feel better, right? I'm not trying to become a botanist. So, a lot of people, because of the way herbs are marketed, try to go out there looking for that one miracle herb, right? Like the fountain of youth, if you will. But the longer you study herbs, right, the more you realize you're asking the wrong questions, right? The question is, why did herbalists keep all of these herbs around, right? Because if generations of herbalists continued growing these plants, drying these plants, studying these plants, and formulating with these plants, there has to be a reason, right? I mean, humans by nature don't just waste time. So today, I want to show you what I think I figured out the reason is, and honestly believe once you understand this, you're never going to look at herbal formulations the same way again. So let's start at the beginning of today's, right? So start with our friend lavender, right? If this was the only respiratory herb I owned, would that be enough? At first study, you might think it is. After all, lavender's been traditionally appreciated, right, for much more than just its beautiful fragrance. Most of us immediately think of relaxation when we talk about lavender, but herbalists have also traditionally appreciated lavender's aromatic chemistry and preparations intended to support comfortable relaxation and overall body, comfort. So immediately you notice something before you ever open the book. No, Fergus. When you smell it, that aroma tells me this plant produces aromatic compounds. The plant is introducing itself. Remember from our last lesson, right? Plants don't make medicine. Plants make chemistry. So if lavender already has all this wonderful chemistry, why would you need another herb? Well, this is where everything changes. So now we're going to add marshmallow root to the conversation, right? Now, again, immediately these two plants feel completely different, right? Lavender walks into the room and introduces itself with this beautiful aroma. Marshmallow root introduces itself in an entirely different way. One of the reasons herbalists traditionally appreciated marshmallow root is because it's naturally rich in that mucilage, right? So if you prepare it correctly, it develops a slippery texture to it. Now, think about that for a minute. We're talking about two herbs that have both been traditionally included in respiratory herbalism, but they're bringing completely different chemistry to the table. Historically, herbalists have often appreciated marshmallow root when they wanted to support the tissue that benefits from moisture and soothing, okay? Lavender, on the other hand, is contributing aromatic compounds. You see how those are different? This is why herbalists don't usually ask which one is better. They ask, what is each contributing, right? What is each bringing to the table? And that's a much better question to ask. But wait, we're not done. We have a lot of respiratory herbs. So now let's add mullein to the conversation, right? This is where things really started to kind of click. If you already have marshmallow root, well, why would you keep mullein, right? Wouldn't they just be doing the same things? Actually, no, they do not. They do not do the same things because they're different plants with different chemistry, right? Mullein has a long history of traditional use for respiratory wellness, and it brings its own unique chemistry. and characteristics to the table. Now, notice something else. One is the root of the plant, one is the leaf of the plant. And with lavender, we have the flower of the plant, right? So already the plants are different before we even start talking about the chemistry of the plant. Historically, herbalists have often appreciated mullein when they wanted to support your lungs and normal respiratory function. Marshmallow root was traditionally appreciated for supporting, again, that tissue from benefiting moisture and soothing, right? So this is what just happened. They're both part of your respiratory system, right? But they're approaching that system and supporting it differently, right? That's why you'll often find mullein and marshmallow root together in a traditional herbal formula. Not because mullein wasn't enough, right? But because, again, best friends, right? So they complement each other and each add something the other does not. They're not in competition, right? They're adding, but we're not done yet. Like I said, we have a lot, but we're only gonna do 4 today. So now let's talk about elderflower. So completely different. Again, we're working with the flowers just like we did with our friend lavender here, but different chemistry, different tradition, right? For generations, elderflower was included in seasonal wellness preparations, traditionally appreciated for supporting the body's normal responses during seasonal changes, including the respiratory system. Now, I want you to step back and look at these 4 herbs, right? We've got lavender, we've got marshmallow root, we've got mullein, we've got elderflower. And if you were to organize your apothecary in body systems, that label is going to say respiratory herbs, right? But don't miss what makes each one of those plants special, right? Each one is bringing different chemistry. Each one has earned its place for different reasons. And that's exactly why herbalists continue to study all of them instead of being like, yep, got my mullein, let's go. So now here's something I personally wish somebody had explained to me many years ago when I first started getting interested in herbs. Have you ever just picked up an herbal tea blend and looked at the ingredients, right? So maybe it contains mullein, marshmallow root, elderflower, peppermint, licorice root, and at first glance, right, you're like, and then they just use 1 or 2 herbs, right? Now, I look at those formulas completely different. Instead of asking, what's this tea for, right? I ask, why is every one of those herbs here, right? And so, what is marshmallow root contributing to this formula, right? What is mullein doing here, right? What role is elderflower playing, right? Why did they add peppermint all of a sudden? What chemistry is in each plant that's helping this blend, right? Those questions will change the way you study formulations, because now I'm not looking at 4 or 5 random herbs. I'm looking at 5 plants, each contributing something unique to the table, right? And when you start thinking that way, herbal formulations suddenly stop looking so random. They look like they're built with intent, right? We do everything with intent. We build our apothecary with intent. We build our formulations with intent, right? So before I finish today, I want to give you some homework. Don't worry, there's not going to be a test, at least not one given by me. You might be testing yourself later, but next time you're in an herbal shop, health food store, or even just shopping online, find a respiratory tea blend, okay? You don't have to really buy it, right? But you can, we can all download the pictures, but look at what it says, like lung support, seasonal wellness, right? And then I want you to turn it over and I want you to read the ingredients. Maybe it contains mullein, marshmallow root, elderflower, peppermint, licorice root, right? Maybe there's thyme or hyssop in there. So instead of asking, what's this tea supposed to do, right? Because that's the surface level question. I want you to ask something completely different. Why did they choose each one of these plants? Why marshmallow instead of another root? Why mullein instead of another leaf? Why elderflower instead of a different flower? Why peppermint? What is each plant contributing that the others are not? And sometimes breaking down somebody else's formulas is the best way to understand your own. You're not going to know all the answers. And that's okay. Neither did I when I first started. But now you've begun asking questions like an herbalist, right? And that's where real learning begins. Memorization is not learning. So, I'll be honest, this changed the way I have bought every herb since. I actually played in the apothecary the other day, came home with some new friends. So years ago, I would have looked at a formulation and thought, well, I already have respiratory herbs, so I just don't need another one. I don't think that way at all anymore. Instead, I ask, what chemistry is missing from my shelf? What perspective does this plant bring that I don't already have? What can be sourced locally? What would I have to wait for, right? Because I'm not trying to collect herbs, right? It's not a competition, right? I'm not going to win an award of most herbs owned. I'm trying to understand the plants. Those are two very different goals. And understanding plants has made me a much better student of herbalism than simply collecting jars ever did. Some of them just collected dust and I never used them. Now, I think nature teaches us something very beautiful here. If there's only one way to support a body system, there would probably only be one plant. Instead, there is incredible diversity, right? There's roots, there's leaves, there's flowers, there's seeds, in some plants, resin, bark, each one making different chemistry, each one contributing something unique, right? And I think that's one of the reasons herbalism has fascinated people for thousands of years. They're just as unique as all of us. Not because plants are magical, but because they're wonderfully diverse, just like us. And the more you study them, the more you realize there's always something new to learn. You're never going to know everything, guys. You just can't. It's impossible. There's too much. So the next time you see 4 herbs sitting in the same shelf, don't think, well, these all do the same thing, because they don't. Instead, ask, what makes each one of these unique? That one question for me completely changed the way I study herbs. And I have a feeling it might change the way you study herbs too. If you've enjoyed today's talk, and love you to tell me in the comments, right? What's one herb you've always wondered about? Maybe it'll be the next one we study together. Who knows? But thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I actually have bought myself 2 herbal blends to break down. Ironically, they named one of them Get Lost and the other one Get Smart. I don't know how these two would work together, because if you get lost, are you smart? I don't know. But I'm going to be breaking down those formulations and trying to figure out why they used each one of the herbs in there. Again, I look at what other people have done. There's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel, right? It rolls just fine. We're trying to understand how to utilize those concepts. Maybe, oh, we'll learn a different property we didn't know, that type of stuff, right? So until next time, guys, stay rooted, stay curious, and as always, keep growing in grace.